Bonjour à tous. Euh, je m'appelle Vincent Michel. Je suis un résident de quatrième année à l'hôpital universitaire de la Paix au service d'orthopédie de traumatologie. Donc, cet après-midi, nous sommes réunis pour débuter avec la 11e édition de la HAAOT sous l'égide de Harvard et de la FOT qui avait comme objectif de promouvoir la chirurgie traumatologique en Haïti. Et c'est un rêve qui s'est développé au fil des années, qui fait qu'aujourd'hui, comme je viens de le dire, nous sommes déjà à notre 11e édition. À noter aussi que depuis la pandémie du COVID-19, nous avons déjà 4 ans que nous faisons cette conférence de manière virtuelle. Et apparemment, nous sommes la conférence virtuelle avec la plus grande longévité à travers le monde. Donc, c'est quelque chose. Donc, le thème de cette année, nous avons voulu couvrir ce qui peut se faire en matière de technique chirurgicale, mais aussi de développement en matière chirurgicale dans les pays à faibles ressources, dont fait partie Haïti. Et c'est pour ça que aujourd'hui, nous avons un panel qui est assez d'Afrique qui ont bien voulu participer avec nous et partager leur expérience, car bien souvent, nous avons des situations sociales et économiques qui sont similaires. Donc, pour la conférence de cette année, il va y avoir quelques apports. Euh, vous allez devoir remplir pour nous un formulaire qui aura des questions assez simples. Ne vous en faites pas, ce n'est pas des questions pour vous coller. Pour avoir une idée de l'impact justement que la HAAOT peut avoir, non seulement pour Haïti, mais à travers le monde en général, en étant, comme je l'ai déjà dit, une des conférences virtuelles, sinon la conférence virtuelle avec la plus grande longévité. À titre informatif, si vous parlez en français, vous voyez au bas de votre écran, il y a 3 points. C'est écrit more ou bien plus. Vous cliquez dessus, vous allez sur caption et sur la langue parlée ou my speaking language, vous allez choisir l'anglais. Et pour la traduction, translation to, vous allez cliquer more et vous allez choisir français ou bien French. Comme ça, lorsque quelqu'un va parler anglais ou français et vice-versa, il va avoir une traduction. En tout cas, je vais passer rapidement la parole à Xavier pour qu'on puisse commencer. Je vous souhaite déjà une bonne participation et une fructueuse à HAAOT. Xavier.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Vincent. Let me go ahead and stop sharing my screen real quick. Perfect. Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the 11th Annual Haitian Assembly of Orthopedic Traumatology Conference, hosted in collaboration with Harvard and our incredible colleagues in Haiti. This conference has been online for the last couple of years, and we've had to continue it in this format because of the conditions in Haiti. But though we can't be in person with our Haitian colleagues today, the virtual format has allowed us to unite and collaborate with individuals in many other countries. I'd like to say a special thank you to my co-host, Dr. Vincent Michel. He's been such a pleasure to work with and has taken on the lead in organizing the conference this year. And a huge shout out to all of our Haitian and USA committee members that helped put this together, as well as the generous support from FOT North America. This year's theme is surgical practice in low resource settings. Today is the first day of our conference, and we will be featuring speakers from Burkina Faso, Ghana, Gambia, Malawi, and the US. We are excited to hear from our phenomenal speakers and cannot wait to foster insightful discussions during our live Q&A sessions. Throughout the talks, like Vincent mentioned, you will see polls pop up on your screen. Please fill these out when you get a chance so we can use the feedback for future conferences. We'll begin with our first speaker. You should see a question pop up on your screen right now. Let me put that up for everyone. Go ahead and answer this to the best of your ability. So to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Kebba Marenah is Gambia's first orthopedic surgeon. He trained and specialized in trauma and orthopedics in the UK and did fellowships in arthroplasty, pelvic and acetabular surgery, and general trauma. He has been practicing in Gambia since 2018 at the Edward Francis Small Teaching Hospital, where he has served as head of surgery and head of orthopedics. He is currently a senior consultant in trauma and orthopedics and a senior lecturer at the University of Gambia. A warm welcome to Dr. Marenah. I'll begin sharing my screen now, so we'll have his pre-recorded presentation up, and then I'll do a live Q&A with him afterwards.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be invited to speak. I have no disclosures to make. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I am Kebba Marenah. I'm a Gambian, trauma orthopedic surgeon, the first Gambian orthopedic surgeon, actually, and I'm trained in the UK. I got my terminal degree in trauma orthopedics in 2017, followed by a fellowship in complex arthroplasty and pelvic and acetabular trauma, also for a year in 2017 in Sussex. I also attended a HAAOT fellowship in Dubai in 2023, and I've worked in the Gambia where I am currently from 2018 to present at the Edward Francis Small Teaching Hospital, where I've served for 2 years as the head of surgery and for 5 years until this year as the head of orthopedics. I've also undergone a HAAOT surgical leadership program, completing that in 2022. This is our hospital in Banjul, the capital, which is a colonial hospital, and as such, it's quite dated as well, with limited space to upgrade. Apart from the nice view being by the sea, there's a lot in the hospital that most of us would like to be much better than it actually is. And we started our journey in this area here in what was the main theatre. So Gambia, if you don't know, is the smallest country in mainland Africa, and it has an estimated population of 2.5 to 3 million people. And there's a single tertiary referral hospital, which is the one that I work out of. And this is the only hospital in the country that manages any aspects, or all aspects of orthopedics care, I should say. As you'd expect from a low-income country, there is a very high trauma load from accidents. And in our case, it's particularly compounded by the fact that there are a lot of traditional bone setters. This has good and bad effects. I often joke that if there were no bone setters, we'd be completely overwhelmed with the work that we have. But of course, there are complications with that I wouldn't really go into in this talk. So taking you back, 2017, when I first started going back to work and volunteer in the Gambia, there were 3 orthopedic surgeons who were all Cuban at the time, and they shared a theater with general surgeons, and they had 3 half days a week for operating, so 1.5 days. And to be honest with that, they did well to manage 250 cases or so a year, which they were doing. The majority of cases were managed non-operatively or referred for treatment to other countries where services were available for those who could afford it. As expected, there were limited materials, limited equipment, and at the time, no CR even. The average length of stay was way over 15 days, as I said, with non-operative treatment and people being referred or just choosing to leave and go to the service. This is a glimpse into theaters back in 2017, sharing with general surgery. I'm sure most of you would finish thinking about orthopedics after having a laparotomy, but that's exactly what was happening. There was a big box of equipment that things were fished out of to be used, and there's a lot that could be improved there. And fast forward to 2023, we now have 4 consultant Gambian surgeons, 3 of which are Gambian, 1 neurosurgeon. There are 3 theaters currently, 1 of which is shared with neurosurgery. And for trauma alone, there's 5.5 days operating per week. For elective work and also using neuro, sometimes we have about 5 days a week for that. We currently have 3 C-arms along with other equipment that are much desired, drills, etc. And we've significantly upped our output to almost 1,400 cases per year for both elective and trauma cases. Things such as hip and knee arthroplasty are becoming routine, arthroscopy, and other more complex trauma surgery which we were doing previously. Spinal fixations, pelvic fixations, etc. is becoming more common. We have been accredited by the West African College of Surgeons to run a residency program since 2022, and we've started 3 residents and looking to increase that number. And the average dental stay is significantly decreased from 5 to 7 days. So a big shift. And this is where we're almost at now. This was in the middle days where we improved our theaters. We built a second theater through some fundraising, which was shared with neurosurgery, and we tried to improve our processes within the hospital. We even have all female operating teams, which is a rarity. We have the best female orthopedic ratio in Africa, with 25%. There's only 4 of us, and 1 of them is female. As I said from the start, a journey of 1,000 miles, and the ending that, of course, it begins with 1 step. And it's been attributed to Churchill as well as Benjamin Franklin, that he who fails to plan, plans to fail. And when I moved back in 2018, I can't take all the credit for it, but I feel that was one of the catalysts for the change. I moved back and I decided that things have to be better and can be better than what they were. So I started off by drawing out a plan and looking at what I call the low-hanging fruit. What are the things that are accessible that will not cause people to say, no, it can't be done, or not ruffle too many feathers? And what were the short and medium-term goals? Now, I'll talk more about long-term goals a bit later, and looking to see things that were urgent versus things that were desirable, especially when you're talking to management and governments. It's easier to put it in this manner because then they can understand a little better. You're not asking for the world. There's things that you feel that need to be changed right now or soon, and why, which is also important. You have to explain why you want to change these things. You know, we had a ward where we shared everything, and also the operating with general surgery, talking about infections, and the infection rate was quite high. And you can use some of those to justify some of the changes. This was a simple 3-page bullet point plan, which was submitted to management saying, these are what I've identified as some of the issues. These are things I think we need to fix as soon as possible. I apologize, I'm recovering from the flu. So I hope my voice is not too raspy, but so there's a cough paper. So it was looking and saying what I wanted to change, reasonably change. I won't go into all the finer details, but I just wanted to show you how we went from 2017 to 2023, and that's just by looking at the plan. So often it feels like it's very tough going, but when you look back, and I look back at this plan, especially now 5 years later, I can see how, you know, gradually things were being ticked off the list. And when you tick off one, you move on to the next thing. And those were my steps. The first step, followed by many other steps, getting to where we are now. Of course, we couldn't have done this without partnerships. So we work very closely with Sign, which is a charitable company that donates us implants. And they're the only consistent implant supply that we have, where they give us intermedullary nails. And for example, let's say consistent, it's the only time we can say we know we have it on the shelf. Everything else is either donation and run out, or patients have to buy, and often they can't afford. We also partnered with the Aero Alliance and Aero Trauma in 2019, which mainly focused on capacity building. And this especially was working on staff, a little bit on infrastructure, and a bit on equipment. And you know, we've trained surgeons at RPs. We have 2 surgeons training in Malawi currently. We sent 1 surgeon to Russia to train, who's now come back and is working with us. So one of the goals was to improve the number of consultants to 5 by 2025, and we're on our way to achieving that goal. I work in Brighton, and the team comes out every year. It's grown to a team of almost 20 people, a multidisciplinary team with anesthesia, physio, radiology, etc. But the beauty of this team is that it's not just one of those missions where they come out and operate on patients. Essentially, what is done is that there's a lot of teaching. One good example is anesthesia. We work with nurse anesthetists mostly, And if you needed a GA, sometimes it just couldn't be done for various reasons because people were not comfortable. And now most of our nurse stations have been taught how to use computer machine and do ultrasound guided regional blocks. And that has really improved our throughput. And there have been other partnerships along the way. But it's important to understand that the people, staff, the human resources are the real assets. Often it's not because they don't want to do things that things are bad. You come as an outsider, you're doing things are terrible, how they're allowed to get this way. But sometimes people just don't know better for lack of putting it that way, not putting it in a better way. If you teach them, they take it on. And that's one thing about a team that we were able to build. It's a team that really wants to do better, that thirst to learn and thirst to know more and to do better. And you can see some of the changes, that big box I showed you at the start. Now we have instruments for each operation. It sounds like it's simple, but of course there was a process in order to get there. Everything is not hunky-dory. The challenges are probably the same as in almost everywhere, and the glass is always green on the other side. But for us, it's important that we want to increase our theatre efficiency. We want a consistent supply of implants, sustainable supply of implants. Also, we want to increase the personnel that we work with, and our specialties are lagging behind. For example, there are only 2 physician assistants in the country, in our hospital. We have 1 radiologist. Often some of the radiology machines are not working, for example. Oncologists, laboratories, etc., are not quite with the pace that we have, and that does slow down progress a little. And this is where I move on to. So what we've done is we've improved things in just 1 hospital. It's an important hospital, but it is just 1 hospital in the capital at the extreme end of the country. So we have to look at the bigger picture, look at improving quality improvement, critical appraisals, and identify gaps and look to close down and narrow these gaps. And I like to think of things in this manner. So we have stuff, which is equipment, space, infrastructure, staff, and human resources. And if you take systems out of this, it just becomes pieces of a puzzle that are not really linked together or complete. If you complete it, you put the systems in, you can complete it. But that's the missing link. So the demographics of the country, it's the smallest country in mainland Africa, 340 kilometers long. And I think that's one of the assets that we have. There are 2 main roads that go along the south bank and along the north bank of the country. And the majority of hospitals are dotted along that line. It takes 6 hours to drive from the capital to one of the furthest points in the country. And therefore, it should be fairly feasible to achieve some of the changes we want to achieve. With the only single tertiary hospital and only 4 surgeons, we don't have an ambulance dispatch system, the significant burden of trauma, and it's overwhelming to existing capacity. But as I said, our geography is unique. Our resources are limited. Government spending on healthcare is limited. It's not adequate. There's high out-of-pocket expenditures. There was a budget declaration, which said 15% of country's budget should be spent on healthcare. But I say there's a saying that 15% of an elephant is not the same as 15% of a chicken. So our budget is more of a chicken budget compared to some of the elephant budgets. And even then, we only spend 10% of it on healthcare. And there's competing interests such as communicable and other diseases. So trauma, of course, is going to get a fraction of what is really needed. It's expensive, but we know that if you invest in trauma, small input can give you very high yield benefits. But unlike HIV, AIDS, etc., it doesn't still get the traction and attention that it really does deserve. Of course, we're biased being orthopedic and trauma surgeons, but still, I think it does need attention. But we know that if we can better organize the existing services, we will improve outcomes. So if you have limited resources and you're not adequately using them and getting the most out of them, if you try and scale up and do anything bigger, you're wasting your time, or you're not going to utilize those other resources better. So we need to learn to manage the existing resources and then try and scale up. And that's why we decided to strategize and have a plan. There are plans called the NSOs, but this National Surgical Obstetric and Anesthesia Plan. But we decided to do something called a National Trauma Injury Plan, something more focused on specific, focused on lower hanging fruit that can be achieved, and something that's easier to implement, not just going to be a file or a folder sitting on a desk somewhere. It can be aligned with other plans of the government, and it needs fewer resources early on to be able to execute what you want to do. One of the beauties of the plan is that it's not a static document. It grows with as you use it. You start to realize things that need to be put in, things that need to be changed and taken out, etc. And therefore, it's a framework for growth and development. And it can dovetail with other plans, and it should be able to have a quantifiable impact. So that is what we went about to do. And this is the preamble of the Gambia National Trauma and Injury Plan, which says the aim is to propose a national essential trauma and injury plan which can be implemented within 1 year with available or readily accessible resources. Implementation of this plan would be expected to reduce deaths and disability resulting from injury. Yeah. And also, we hope that it creates a framework over the next 10 years to improve trauma care systems and networks. We know that that will involve some investment, but we want to do the low-hanging fruit first. So the systems within the plan will be communication pathways so that all the hospitals are interacting, symbiosis, not standalone facilities. There'll be bi-directional referral pathways, improve coordination, reduce congestion, allow local rehabilitation for patients, and improve patient flow. Responses would be strengthened, especially first responders, and this would include training of staff and non-staff, non-healthcare workers. But one of the main things for me is data. So we have a trauma registry that we've started. We've been running for almost 18 months now, and we will expand this to the other hospitals. Because if we understand our burden, if we understand our problems, we're more likely to tackle them properly. We're more likely to have better outcomes if we're guided by data, and clinical governance better with better quality improvements. It also needs to be monitoring and evaluation component in the plan. An example of the importance of data, anecdotally, we all thought that if you were knocked down on the side of the road, you were scooped up, put in a taxi, and brought to the hospital. And anybody who happened to go to another facility because there's an ambulance there would just get packaged and shipped to us very quickly. However, very early on with WHO registry data, we found that 86% of patients actually arrived by ambulance, meaning they went to the facility first. So if you're going to focus your efforts, you'd focus it on that facility and what care they got there. And as I told you, it takes 6 hours to drive along the road to the end of the country, but the mean time from injury to arrival, given that they went to another facility, was 39.6 hours. So there's a lot of time being wasted, a lot of things that we can then pick out to improve on. And that's why I think data is very important. It helps us target our interventions to include them in the plan and include systems improvements. So, in summary, system strengthening can improve utilization of all the cogs in the machine. It should lead to improved outcomes. Data is a very, very important part of planning. And when you plan, you can make your plan. Don't be afraid to reevaluate your plan and maybe change course if need be. Don't always stick the course. But where necessary, stubbornness and perseverance is the key. And that is my message. I thank you for listening, and I'm happy to take any questions. If there's a bit of time, I'll play a little video just to show you our hospital. I wrote a poem 180 days into coming home, and it was just really talking about the journey and how overwhelming it might have been initially. But this is what drove me here, this feeling here. When I say a feeling of melancholy, really, it was the fact that even though things were going well, I still felt that things could be better, that there were things that we could improve, and I was definitely going to try and improve those where I could. And I say with each rise, I remember that the fall is not far away. With each dip, I understand the essence is to rise again. And with each return to the start, I know there'll be fewer surprises on the next journey around. But the important thing is, I'm still learning, we're all still learning. And because we want to do better, we're learning how to do better. This is our new home, and we hope to make this the first trauma center in the country, hopefully manage trauma better there. And we have also graduated into a department status. And having done that, that's where I decided to make way and focus on the bigger picture in terms of policy development, etc., and allow someone else to run things on the ground. And I'll just play this, just so you can see how we moved from the first image in the first theater you saw to now doing a spinal fixation in one theater and walking through the door. And this is me in the lesser group theater doing an I think it was an osteotomy and malunion correction, and then going on to the last theatre, where we can see a fracture fixation going on. And to me, this is encouraging progress, and I hope this inspires people that hope is not all hope is lost, and a lot of things can come out if you approach things in the right way. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Marenah. Dr. Marenah, you're here and I see your video. So can you go ahead and unmute? Let's see if there's any questions in the chat so far. Oh, yes, we actually have one question. Vincent, will you translate this question for us?
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, Dr. Marenah, for this brilliant presentation. So the question is, thank you so much for your presentation. I'm a medical student and I'm also from Gambia. I was wondering, how do you manage things like patient education and follow-up care, considering the barriers such as limited access to healthcare facilities, like you mentioned? So I'm gonna just translate that quickly. Bonsoir, Dr. Marenah, je viens de la Gambie, je suis un étudiant en médecine. Comment vous gérez, comment vous abordez l'éducation des patients, le follow-up des patients, et en prenant en compte les barrières qui sont l'accès limité à la santé et aux services de santé dont vous avez parlé?
Thank you for the question. Also, just thank you for having me here today. The patient education is very important and is one of the steps that we plan to focus on as we go forwards in terms of mass education, advocacy, etc. But even with our current setup, I think it's more about in an individual basis, actually spending time with patients and taking the time to explain to them. Doctors can often be very fond of feeling they're too busy to do what some may consider little things, but actually a lot of things that we can change. And patients are your best advert in a way, or your best advocate. You know, spending time and talking to a patient, explaining to them, they will then go on and tell the next person they see who has a similar problem, you know, this is what to expect when you have so and such injury. You know, I don't know if you have the same issues in your countries. A lot of people are afraid of having metal work inside, for example, and we take the time to explain that to them where we can, and also talk about rehabilitation. But again, with the current setup, until we fully enact our trauma plan, most of this happens in our center. So patients will come and spend 2 or 3 weeks with us, sometimes less, until such time that they're able to go back. And it's just making sure you take the time out to explain as much as you can to your patients. But definitely, on a wider scale, we do plan to do some advocacy work, either via the media, news and newspapers, etc., TV rather. But that's definitely something that should be done as part of improving care in general.
Thank you so much, Dr. Marenah. Any other questions?
Shravya, if I may.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Dr. Marenah, I actually have a question. What would you say is the biggest challenge in implementing a trauma care service or ward in a low-income setting?
It's not an easy question. I think it's choosing what your biggest battle is on the day. You know, every day something else becomes the biggest challenge. But I think one of the biggest challenges really is getting government support, because in a low to middle income country, we know resources are limited even at government level, and they have priorities. And whilst I might sit in the hospital and think that the hospital must be the biggest priority, somebody sitting in an office in the presidency saying we don't have electricity in the country, or there's no food, or something along those lines. And it's just trying to align what you see and what you feel with what the policymakers see as what is being important. Mm-hmm. And again, that brings me back to what I mentioned in the talk about data. And often data speaks for itself. It's one thing when you go and sit with the minister or someone else and say, I want a trauma center, as opposed to going and saying, this is the burden of trauma. So I literally sat down on a daily basis for 1 year, collecting on paper every trauma victim that we had in our hospital. And that was what I presented as 1 year data of trauma. And until then, there was no idea of how many accidents, serious accidents were coming in, how many deaths per year, etc. And that made it to the news, and everybody sort of sat up and said, oh, we actually have a problem. Even though it seems fairly obvious, until you put numbers in front of people, sometimes it's not as obvious.
Shravya, Dr. Wule, one of our attending, has a comment on one of the answers. Dr. Wule, can you unmute it? It's HUP LAPET department.
Yeah, thank you, Vincent, and thank you to the committee. So good to see you again, my friend. How are you? Thank you for doing this for this conference. And my question is kind of follow up from what Vincent mentioned. And I think we discussed this already, but how did you manage to kind of create that trauma registry? And what was because you mentioned data, and I think that's one of the most important things to justify whatever you're trying to justify on a political and administrative level. But the trauma registry that you mentioned, how did you navigate through IRBs and partnerships and even AO Alliance that you mentioned that you had? Was it difficult for you to create that registry, or was it pretty simple in your political setting?
In our setting, it was quite simple, and it started with me collecting manually data for a year and showing the need to collect it on a more robust basis. And again, the issue comes when you ask someone to fund it. So luckily, we have the AO Alliance as one of our KPIs in our country initiative to look at data. So we got that funded, and even the data collectors are still funded by the AO Alliance, and that made it easier to institute it. We, again, work with partners. We send the data collectors to Ethiopia, where they work with some of our colleagues there who you know, and they sort of put them through what they're doing, and they came back to try and replicate the same thing with us. So that's essentially what we did. There's an WHO registry database online that you can use, and that's what we're currently using.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, we have one last question. It's a PGY2 from HUP. He's basically asking what strategies that you put in place to reduce the time between the trauma and the arrival at your center.
So this is a question for the future. Hopefully, I'd say for the near future, because that's why we brought the trauma plan in. As you see, it takes 39 hours to get from a hospital that's 4 hours away. And we want to, and I think one of the biggest issues with that is just coordination. You know, is there somebody at that center that knows how the patient should come over? Is there someone at the receiving center who can coordinate the arrival? So in our trauma plan, we have what we call trauma coordinators. So we have a national one who will be based at our center. And then each of the smaller hospitals will have a trauma coordinator whose sole job is to make sure these patients move around in a timely manner. So that also includes, if an ambulance is coming down to us, it would make sense that we would package the patient that we operated on 2 days ago to send back, for example, and make space, because we have very limited space where we operate. So we're hoping having that trauma coordinator on that network is going to improve the times for transfer, because most patients will go to another hospital first before coming. It's not really a case of ambulance picking up on the road and coming directly to us at the moment.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Marenah. We really appreciate you taking time out of your day to speak to us today.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Awesome. We will move on to the next presenter, Dr. Conor Spady, who is an orthopedic surgery trauma fellow with a strong passion for global humanitarian work. He studied medicine at Loma Linda University, completed the Global Orthopedic Surgery Fellowship at HAH through LLU, and is currently pursuing the Orthopedic Trauma Fellowship at UC San Francisco. Inspired by Dr. Paul Farmer, Dr. Spady has developed his orthopedic skills in Haiti, Nepal, and Liberia. Driven by a desire to continue international outreach, he seeks opportunities to combine his medical expertise with his dedication to humanitarian efforts. A warm welcome to Dr. Spady. who will be speaking live for us. So I will go ahead and spotlight him. Perfect. Welcome, Dr. Spady.
Hey, can you see my presentation now?
We sure can.
Perfect. Okay, so hello everyone. I'm Connor. It was a super nice introduction by Shravna. Thank you for that. Sorry, I'm in scrubs right now, such is the life of a trauma fellow, as you guys probably all know. Oh, let me close this here. Okay, so also, and I apologize, I wish I could be giving this talk in Creole or French. Unfortunately, after I was so busy doing orthopedic surgery last year that I didn't really learn the language very well. So I apologize about that too. But yeah, so I spent the last year in Haiti after finishing orthopedics residency in 2022. I'll talk briefly about a little bit more about that in a second. But this title, Partners in Orthopedics, I gave the talk, you probably, most of you will recognize is in reference to Partners in Health and Dr. Paul Farmer. You know, some of you probably even know personally, or at least maybe better than I do. But I wanted to reference this not only because this is a well-known figure in Haiti and global medicine, but also I do think the word partners really emphasizes kind of what I was asked to speak about today and the point of my talk here, which is that I want to encourage thought and discussion about how we can best all work together to provide good care from an orthopedic standpoint to patients throughout the world. And if there's one thing I learned from working a year in a place like Haiti is that the world is very big and there's a lot of patients that have a lot of bad problems, some of them simple, some of them complex. And I learned more about how I'm a very small part of this world, and individually, each of us are all pretty small, if you will. But I think by working together, we can accomplish big things. Let's see. My slide is not advancing here. Okay, there we go. Most of us here are surgeons or medical professionals in training. So in surgery, we all know that we can't go into any surgery without a good pre-op plan. And so briefly here, I just wanted to illustrate what we're going to talk about. So the plan for today, we'll go through just a little bit of background stuff. We'll try to keep that short. We'll dive in a little bit more about what partnership means. And then there's a couple kind of big picture topics I wanted to go through. And then we'll finish up with some cases that kind of illustrate some of the concepts and tips and tricks. Just to be clear, I wanted to emphasize the fact that, especially with those last topics we'll discuss, I don't feel like I have answers to any of these things. I think, my point here is to kind of raise questions. There's a lot of people on this talk, like our last presenter, who probably have a lot more experience than I do and experiential knowledge. And so, while I'm here to raise questions, I think as a group, we can all kind of discuss things and maybe try to come up with answers. And that's kind of the point of groups like this. We might not have time to discuss a lot after this talk, but I'll leave my email up at the end of the talk. So if anyone has any further thoughts or ideas, I would love to hear them. So just a little bit of background. Shravna already mentioned some of this stuff, and this is kind of the least important slide, but just to give everyone some context. So I finished residency in orthopedics in 2022. That was after medical school and residency at a place called Loma Linda University in California. That's this picture here. If you've never heard of Loma Linda, that's understandable. It's not, doesn't have nearly the connections, or it's not as big of a place as somewhere like Harvard or where I'm currently at, UCSF. But it is pretty, it does have pretty strong connections with global medical care and humanitarian work. So, and that's mostly because of its connection with a church. So it was founded by the Seventh-day Adventist Church. The Seventh-day Adventist Church, they have been doing medical work since the 1800s when they first became a church, and currently is one of the largest nonprofit health delivery systems worldwide. They operate something like over 500 hospitals and clinics globally. And so this is Haiti Adventist Hospital. And as I mentioned, or obviously in the name, there's a connection with the Adventist Church. You know, we can maybe talk a little bit more about this later, but it is somewhat of a, loose connection. The hospital itself is totally locally run. The budget is made directly through local operations. So the partnership is kind of just in name, though, being at least loosely associated with somewhere like Loma Linda, there is a certain amount of like donations and volunteers like me who just become aware of the place, and so make time to visit and volunteer there. Like I mentioned, the hospital was built in the 1980s, and they've been taking care of patients and running ever since. Even after the 2010 earthquake in Haiti, thankfully the hospital only suffered minor damage. There was only one crack in one wall, and that actually was the time when the hospital started doing a lot more orthopedics, specifically because this guy Scott Nelson, a mentor of mine who I'll talk more about in a second, started doing orthopedics there after the earthquake. And so the hospital is fairly well known for orthopedics in the area, mostly because Dr. Nelson is working there full time. That being said, the hospital does encompass the full range of medical specialties. There's almost 300 Haitian employees employed by the hospital. And we have orthopedic residents from the state hospital that rotate through with us every month, some of whom I think maybe are listening now. So the hospital is in Carrefour, which is right near Port-au-Prince. As anyone that's been in Haiti recently knows, or watched the news about Haiti knows, there is some violence in areas. One of those areas is called Martissant, just happens to be right between Port-au-Prince and where the hospital is. So it does make working at the hospital and getting back and forth fairly difficult. Frequently, whenever I would have to go back and forth the last year, we would go kind of a circuitous route through the mountains here, like what you can see there, which sometimes had its own challenges. But thankfully, we were all pretty safe at the hospital. And then the last part of background stuff I wanted to just touch on is like why I wanted to work in Haiti for a year, why I still want to keep working in Haiti in the future, and why medical professionals from the United States or other countries want to help out in any way they can in places like Haiti. So for me, it started like Dr. Shravna mentioned in high school. I believe I read this book, Mountains Beyond Mountains, about Paul Farmer, which first got me interested in medicine to begin with, like why I wanted to become a doctor, and then also work in Haiti. It's kind of outside the scope of this talk to go into too much more details, but I think all of us as doctors and workers in the medical field have an inherent desire to help other people and be a part of something bigger than ourselves. And so, these are things that motivated me to want to spend time in Haiti. Something that a lot of you have probably seen, if not, I really encourage you to look at is there's this TED talk about, it's titled "Why I Would Rather Have HIV Than a Broken Leg." So, Paul Farmer, being an infectious disease specialist, he may or may not be offended by this statement, but trauma really is one of the leading causes of morbidity and mortality in the world, and really is a neglected disease. And this talk really illustrates that. Again, slightly outside the scope of this talk, my talk here, to go more into that, but I would encourage you to look at that. And then these next two pictures, this guy here is Dr. Nelson. He's, he's the guy I spent a year in Haiti with. It was technically a fellowship I did, Global Orthopedics Fellowship. He was a full-time attending, doing pediatric orthopedics and trauma, as well as deformity at Loma Linda, and for the last about 6 years now has spent all of his time, has devoted his life to working in Haiti. And so I learned a lot from him, and he does a lot of good. He's still there currently right now. This kind of a funny picture. I don't want to take up too much time, but all these pictures have stories behind them. This picture with the mask, that's a CPAP machine, which is just really ubiquitous in the United States. A lot of patients with COPD just have them in their homes. As a lot of you probably know, in somewhere like Haiti, it's really hard to use things like ventilators, or there's no BiPAP machines. But we happened to find this CPAP machine stored in a closet, and we later used it to actually save a patient's life, which I might go into more detail here in a second. Let's move on. So what exactly does it mean? What does partnership mean? So, the obvious thing, it means like us as medical professionals working together to accomplish a goal. Even though this is super obvious, it's amazing how hard it is in real life to do. I think part of what makes it hard is that there's just so many patients needing help. There's so many organizations, so many doctors. We're all very busy. We have a lot of patients to take care of. It's hard to make time to work together, and I think this really underlines the importance of kind of forums and meetings like this, so that we can get to know each other and accomplish our goals together. I think it really underlies the importance of education. So someone like me, I might in my life only be able to devote a year in Haiti. Someone like Dr. Higgins here might only be able to come for a couple weeks, but it's not just about our time there and the surgeries that happen then, but it's the partnerships we make and the relationships we make. And so, even if I'm only there a year, if Josephat here or Jume calls me up and says, "Hey, I have this patient. Can I send you some x-rays?" Or they email me. These are things that I think make for lifelong partnerships and relationships. And I think that really is important. Moving on. So delving in, and this kind of is outside the scope of this talk too, but partnership means more than just partnering with other doctors, and this is something Paul Farmer talks a lot about, especially in this book here. If you have a chance to read, it means partnering with patients, and that means more than just like doing a surgery and then forgetting about them. It means that we take care of them and everything we need, and truly. Partnering with patients means it's almost something more than just medicine. We think of it from like a social justice thing and taking care of poor patients. And again, this isn't a sermon. This isn't we don't have time to go into it too much, but the word praxis is a good word that means putting theory into practice, and it's a word that's talked a lot about in liberation theology. There's a quote I wanted to read. It's talking about Christians, but I think you could substitute the word doctor. So I'm going to substitute that. So, the Christian faithful or doctors are obliged to promote social justice and be mindful of the precept to assist the poor. It indicates an obligation on the part of those who would call themselves, I'm going to say doctors. So an obligation on the part of the poor who would call themselves doctors, first and foremost, to care for the poor and vulnerable. And so ultimately, I think, if we're calling ourselves doctors, our obligation is to take care of poor people, and that's something that's important to keep in mind when we talk about being partners and partnering with our patients as well. Okay, let's delve into a couple more topics. And again, these are things that I don't feel like I have good answers to, but I can raise some questions. When we talk about partnering with other countries, it sounds great. Some of the practical stuff is a little bit tricky, specifically when it comes to finances and how we take care of poor people. One thing I noticed when in my year in Haiti is, it's tricky coming from somewhere, wealthier like the United States, where some institutions like MSF or Partners in Health, they have the funding just to take care of patients for free. HAAH, we just didn't have the funding for that, for one thing. But even what we did, it's tricky when you provide care, free care for some people, and how do you make money to employ your staff? And then also, how do you not undermine the local doctors? There's a lot of doctors that are trained in Haiti, and they need to make a living. They need to do, they can't just operate on wealthy people. So again, I'm not 100% sure I know of any answers to this. This is something I think as groups and forums like this, we can talk about. One way that HAH, we made it work was we employed financial counselors who met with every single patient and kind of determined from them, who was able to pay for some or part or all of their care. And in this way, make sure that everyone got taken care of regardless of if they could pay. But it's tricky. And, orthopedics is something that's kind of expensive. You need x-rays, you need equipment and supplies, and there's a lot of staff involved. So something to think about. Another kind of big picture stuff, less of a practical thing and more of a philosophical thing. Even though we're all doctors and we all have the same goal, we come from different worlds and different worldviews. In the United States, even if patients can't pay, they get the same level of care as everyone else for the most part, and we kind of use maximal resources on every single patient. And not that shouldn't be the case in any country, but it's harder, and especially when patients, kind of this relates to the last slide. When patients come in and hear that they might be charged for some of their care, they sometimes leave. And that was very difficult for me to adjust to. And I don't think it maybe was a good thing to adjust to. Any of the residents that are here, the Haitian residents that I worked with, will know that I got fairly upset if I ever heard overnight that a patient had left with an open fracture, because that's very detrimental to their care. And so, when we're partnering and working with people from other countries, it's important to recognize that we do come from different worldviews, but we all want the same goal, and that's to take good care of patients. And so we just have to recognize these things and work together. Let's spend the next few minutes just kind of going over a few cases. These aren't like going into any detail at all about the cases, but just showing different x-rays and pictures from my last year, patients that we took care of, to kind of illustrate some of the concepts we've talked about, and some new concepts and ideas. I'm a surgeon. I love surgery. I can't possibly do a talk without showing some of my x-rays. And this conference, as Shravana mentioned, is about how to do tips and tricks for how to take good care and do good surgeries. So I had to throw some in here. At the outset, one thing I've learned just in a few months of trauma fellowship is how great it is to have temporary fixation and utilize whatever tools available. Now, sometimes we might not have all these, like maybe everyone here might not have, this is a femoral distractor on the left, and then putting in a sign nail. But, we all have X-Fix supplies. And in fact, in places like Haiti, it was much easier for me to use an X-Fix, and then we just sterilize everything, rather than the United States. It's crazy. A lot of this stuff, you use an X-Fix and they throw it in the trash afterwards, which is crazy. But everyone has an X-Fix, so we can do any of this stuff, which is really cool. So this here just shows that, if you hold out your length and alignment with a distractor or an X-Fix, it's really easy to put a sign nail in. as we all know, that a proximal tibia fracture can be fairly difficult to do otherwise. This one on the right here is a femur fracture I did a few months ago in Haiti. So this was, we have C-arm, but this was a closed reduction. It wasn't an open reduction. And so it just goes to show how something as simple as just a traction pin and then hanging some weight off the end of the OR table can really make it a lot easier to just put a nail in. So that's a tip. Another concept to illustrate. So just making the best of every situation. So this is different for every single patient, and it might be different than, than other countries too. We all want to provide the best possible care for every patient, but the fact is that doing something like a total hip comes with a lot of complications. And while it might be pretty easy to do in the United States, even though we have, that we might have implants and stuff available, but it might be not the best thing to do for a patient in Haiti. And so here's an example of a younger patient with severe post-traumatic arthritis. And we did something called a PSO, which we don't have the time to talk too much more about, but here he is walking without pain and without a Trendelenburg gait after that surgery. Whoops. So another concept, just kind of a broad concept, think big. That for me, seeing everything I saw in Haiti and all the amazing work Dr. Nelson has done and the staff at HAH, not just talking about surgery, like here we are with Dr. David doing a knee scope, but really when it comes to like facilities, big hospital planning, doing the best you can to think big picture and have big goals. Here, this middle picture is a big, huge oxygen concentrator we put in while I was there, and that helped us be able to make our own oxygen tanks and even supply some to surrounding hospitals cheaply. And in a place like Haiti where it's hard to even drive across town to get oxygen, this truly saved patients' lives. In fact, some of these patients depicted here wouldn't be alive without that. Thinking outside the box, this is something I saw time and time again over my year in Haiti. In the US, someone with this bad of a fracture, open tibia fracture, almost certainly would have just gotten an amputation. It took a lot of time and effort and surgery. And here we are doing a bone transport with an Elizarov frame, and had Dr. Jackie, our Haitian attending, is really good at flaps and skin grafts. And here he is all healed up with a nice, well-healed leg. Similarly to that, just never giving up. This patient, the 11-year-old girl, got run over by a motorcycle, just really badly open fracture here. I mean, on this picture, you can see here the entire tibia is exposed with dead periosteum, and it took a lot of surgeries and irrigation and debridements and skin grafts, but here she is with a healed leg, which is just amazing. Thinking about sustainability, not just what is possible, but what is going to be able to be sustained long term. And like our last speaker mentioned, it's hard to, in orthopedics, we need a lot of implants. So it's hard to have things on the shelf sometimes, but we don't want to just rely on donations or just be looking on the shelf for what's there. We want to think about as best we can about having consistent supply chains so that all our stuff is all there and ready to go. For us at HAH, something that's worked is just buying implants from India. We can't afford necessarily to buy the same implants that you use in the United States, and you can't rely on just people just giving leftovers to you all the time. So Dr. Nelson would fly to India sometimes and bring a couple suitcases of implants back that work really well. Taking pride in the facility, similar to that. So one thing I really noticed, we were constantly doing renovation projects at HAH, and it's amazing. It makes sense. Patients want to be in a place that's nice, and staff like working in a hospital that's nice. Here's some of the staff, the nurses taking pictures at their new workstation. it was really cool to see that the patients would all take pictures. I mean, some people even came and took their wedding photos there. Dr. Nelson employs one person whose only job is to just go around and pick up trash. So that way, you know, the hospital is always in the like free of trash and looks clean and nice, and people work hard and take pride in that. Being organized. So in orthopedics, as you know, we use a ton of stuff and implants, and you know, it would be impossible to do your job well unless you stay organized. This is our little orthopedics depot here with all the screws nicely in labeled boxes, and it's easy to find things and resupply the trays. You know, and it also comes to patient care. You know, we take care of a lot of patients now. Every day might not look quite as busy as this OR day here for us, but you know, regardless of if there's a few patients or a lot of surgeries to do, it's important to stay organized and have good plans every day. Staying attention to small details is really important in orthopedics. So, you know, it's very easy in trauma surgery to mal-rotate something a little bit or give a bad alignment. So we have to stay true to our fundamentals and length, alignment, rotation, as anyone who's, you know, done an AO course will know. You know, we might not always have x-rays, but you can still clinically assess rotation and alignment. If you have C-arm, you can use different tools to measure alignment and your rotation as well. This one, just kind of a broad thing, maybe more applicable to those of us coming from the US or other countries like that and working in a place like Haiti, that it's okay to be a little bit outside our comfort zone. This patient here had a gunshot wound through his femoral artery, came in the middle of the night. We tried to get our Haitian general surgeon to come in, but he wasn't able to come in due to the road being dangerous. And so Dr. Nelson and I, orthopedic trauma surgeons, repaired his artery, which is kind of crazy, but you know what? At the end of the day, it's really not that much outside of what we're trained to do. We know the anatomy. We know how to put vessels back together. It's just a matter of doing it. So that's okay and really cool to see. That being said, you know, we shouldn't be doing things that are totally outside our wheelhouse, but it's okay, like I said, to be a little bit outside our comfort zone. One important concept Dr. Nelson always really emphasized to me, and I think is really important, is to improvise but not compromise. What that means is there's more than one right way to do things, but we can still get the same good result. For instance, this is one of our OR suites here at HAH, and this table here it's just a wooden table. It looks pretty simple. You might say, well, why don't we just invest in a nice table from the United States, get someone to donate it, or just spend some money and ship one down? But this table really works just as well, just as good or better than any table you could buy in the United States. You can raise and lower it pretty easily. It's nice and sturdy and strong. It's radiolucent and easy to get the C-arm through. So I think it's a good example of improvising to the setting, but not compromising at all on function or outcome. Similar to this X-ray here of a forearm I fixed a few months ago in Haiti. You know, this is just a regular straight plate, and you know, in the US you need all these fancy plates that are pre-contoured and stuff like that, but you can just bend it yourself and get a good result as well. Again, just some broad concepts here about being brave. I saw a lot of very brave patients in my year in Haiti. This is Clifford, who has this terrible deformity, and here he is just a week or two after surgery, walking around with the therapist. Just a super brave kid, and it also ties into us as surgeons being brave. And it's kind of a crazy operation, but you know, it's something that we can do and really improve the lives of our patients. Similar to that, being humble. This patient actually is from the only patient here that is actually from Liberia, not Haiti, but not just talking about her being humble, but also us as surgeons being humble. I mean, if you look at this kind of crazy deformity in our surgery, and here she is with nice, pretty straight legs and smiling, you know, there's nothing like our part of it is very, very, very small. Like it's not that hard to do the surgery. We didn't do any of the healing. You know, she had to do that, or if you believe in God or whatever, like something other than us did the healing. We just do a small part of it. So staying humble, similar to that, staying positive. These patients go through a ton. The surgery is a very small part of it. They have to go through therapy and a lot of it. And just being thankful that we get to be a small part in their lives and to really make a big difference really can put things into perspective and keep you positive, as well as just the fact that Haiti's a beautiful country and you get to do cool stuff like go dirt biking with Dr. Lacorn here, which can help keep you positive as well. So got to finish up here, running out of time, but just in conclusion, one of the best parts about working together and partnering and collaborating with people in other countries is you make a lot of cool new friends. Dr. Archulus here was my co-fellow from Haiti. He's now practicing in Port-au-Paix. I haven't talked to him in a while. Actually, I think he's on this talk, and I can't wait to hear how he's doing and hear about Port-au-Paix and maybe go visit him at some point soon. But we work with a lot of cool people and nurses and doctors and staff. And so I'm really thankful for that time. And yeah, just to conclude, it's a big world. There's a lot of patients. There's a lot of need. And individually, we are very, very small, but together we're not. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Spady. And it's also almost like coming full circle because Dr. Nelson spoke for us last year. So it's exciting to see one of his mentees come back and be a speaker.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, any questions from anyone? Go ahead and put them in the chat, or you can unmute and ask. Vincent, have you gotten any questions on your end?
Oh, not yet.
Okay.
Let me see. Dr. Spady, I actually have sort of a question. How do you set up the funding of such cooperation? I mean, it's good to exchange and build a hospital, settle the system in Haiti, but to get the funding to do so, how does it work? Is it just purely networking, or how does it work?
So that's a really good question. So and it ties into what I think is practically one of the hardest parts about operating a place like HAH. So the way that we've done it at HAH is that donations and funding we get outside the hospital, and that is mostly we could talk about where that comes from, but all of that goes to like capital gains projects. So the stuff like building the oxygen concentrator, redoing the patient rooms, all that, like all those renovations, that's all funded directly through that. And then all the hospital operations like payroll and that type of thing is all supplied just from like actual hospital operations. So that's the way we've done it. Now, obviously, to start something like this, you have to start from somewhere, and that's where I think the hospital's been going on for a while and built by the church. But where the funding for the donations and stuff comes from is a lot of it is like kind of smaller donations. We have that's organized by Dr. Nelson. Either people read our blog or that type of thing. It's called Haiti Bones and donate it, or there are a couple larger donors as well, and those are just partnerships that Dr. Nelson and people like him have made.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
Dr. Spady, if you don't mind me asking, what does your future practice look like? Where do you ultimately want to end up?
That's a good question. So I will say, I had to take out a lot of loans to do medical school and residency in the United States. As anyone that has looked into that knows, it's fairly expensive. So I do need to pay those off. Probably, and then to be an orthopedic surgeon in the United States, you do have to work for 2 years and then do your oral board. So realistically, I'll probably work for 2 years in the United States and hopefully pay off most of my loans. And then I'd like to find a practice either to work kind of part-time overseas or full-time in a setting, hopefully like a teaching facility overseas, either in Haiti or maybe like with the PAC system or that type of thing, but we'll see.
Dr. Spady, one last thing. How do you think that we can, from a collaboration like this, make an hospital like the Adventist Hospital autosufficient, like nationwide, nationwide? Like starting a collaboration and then on the long run, make the hospital autosufficient that they can have their implants, they don't need donations anymore. And you see where I'm going with that.
Yeah, definitely. This is just really the hardest thing, and it's something that Dr. Nelson and I talk a lot about. I talk a fair bit about the Adventist Church, and I'm supportive of that, in that I'm a Seventh-day Adventist myself, but even that church really doesn't support the hospital a lot as much as I think it should. You think of a global church, you would think that there would be more like kind of direct funding and stuff for healthcare, which is such an important part of the need in the world. I will say, just from my limited experience, I think it takes people really kind of dedicating their lives and working very hard at this. Like I can say, I don't want to talk him up too much, but like HAH wouldn't be what it is without Dr. Nelson, as anyone that's worked there would know. But when you have someone like that really puts a lot of time and effort into it, it's amazing what you can do and the partnerships you can build. And I think that goes into, talks like this. Like it sounds cliche, but if we work together, we can really accomplish a lot. And it seems pretty daunting, but by putting the time in and working day in and day out, it's pretty crazy what can be done.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, sorry, I hope that was somewhat of a good answer.
No, that was great. Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Spady. We're going to actually take about a 10-minute break. So everyone go ahead and get some water, get some food to eat, and we'll be back in like 10 minutes.
Thank you.
All right, if everyone's back, we'll go ahead and get started with the second half of the first day of our conference. I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Malick Diallo. He's an orthopedic surgeon in Burkina Faso and an associate professor of the African and Malagasy Council of Higher Education in Orthopedic Surgery. He studied medicine in Burkina Faso and Senegal. He then completed his training in France. And since 2015, Dr. Diallo has participated in national orthopedic surgery and trauma residency programs in Burkina Faso. Please welcome Dr. Diallo. I'll be playing his pre-recorded presentation, and then he will do a question and answer session in the chat. And everyone see my screen? Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah, we were seeing it. Not anymore.
Okay,
Yeah.
I think it might be gone now. 1 second.
It works.
Hello, everyone. It's a great pleasure for me to share our experience as part of the 2023 Haitian Annual Conference of Orthopedic Surgery and Traumatology. My name is Malick Diallo, and my talk deals with internal fixation in limited resource setting. I would like to share some information about my homeland, Burkina Faso, situated in the center of West Africa. It's a landlocked country. I work in Bobo-Dioulasso, the second largest city of the country, located in the southwest region, approximately 400 kilometers from the capital city, Ouagadougou. The CHU Sourou-Sanon is also known as Sourou-Sanon University Hospital, has a history of more than a century. It was originally a small colonial hospital that has now become a significant institution. Our trauma department is the only level 3 trauma center in the western region of our country. And we also treat patients from neighboring countries. Our hospital serves a population of approximately 8 to 10 million people. We receive about 24,000 patients every year, with more than half of them being trauma patients. After a brief introduction, I would like to analyze the issues of internal fixation in low-resource setting. Then I will present some examples of strategies implemented to solve them before the final take-home message. In bone and joint surgery, internal fixation is a crucial technique. Although non-operative treatment factors is common, operative management in low-resource settings increase significantly. To ensure successful internal fixation, certain imperatives must be met, such as adequate infrastructure, diversified instrumentation, and surgical expertise. The objective of the surgery are to achieve stable fixation and control infection rate, while minimizing the number of procedures required. In summary, make internal fixation safe, efficient, and affordable. What challenges are encountered in settings with limited resources? Challenges arise from various levels, including the injury, the patient, the facility, and the physician. Injuries tend to be diagnosed late. Patients are often under-insured. Medical facility has limited resources. Physicians must plan truly, remain flexible in their approach, and maintain an open-minded attitude. When dealing with injuries, it is important to ask 4 key questions. First, what are the deadlines involved? This includes the time between the accident and the hospital admission, as well as the time between the trauma and any necessary operation. 2, what are the available and accessible means of medical imaging, X-ray or CT scan? 3, what are the type of bone fixation is being considered? And 4, what is the potential evolution of the injury? Traditional bone setters use mood and fixation to treat injuries. And debriding then revealed true extent of the injury. If a CT scan is available, it can provide a better access to injuries such as tibial plateau fractures and acetabular fractures. In the absence of a CT scan, multiple oblique views are the best way to assess injuries. However, sometimes it may not be possible to obtain multiple view if the imaging tube is fixed. Also to be aware of the type, the size, the quantity of implant you have. There are no complete or varied stock of implant. In certain cases, you may need to modify plate and screw to fit the required dimension. It is necessary to provide a prescription, and the patient or their family will need to push out the implant before the surgery. When dealing with the patient, it is crucial to ask the following questions. Who will provide financial support for their care, themselves, their family, or their insurance? What is the importance of accompanying family members and friends during the treatment process? Their presence can't be necessary for the decision-making, processing medication and implants, and providing care at the patient bedside. 3, that is the patient level of education regarding operative risk and post-operative instructions. And 4, does the patient accept use of implant? It is important to know that some individuals may refuse to have metal introduced in their body due to cultural belief. Issue may arise from institution regarding the operating room, availability of specific equipment, sterilization process, and support staff. Most of the time, operating rooms are shared with other surgical specialties, such as digestive. In these cases, rest time must be offered. Sterilization is offered chemically and often use formaldehyde despite the danger of its use. You must use the operating table that is available, even if a factory table is incomplete or inadequate. The image intensifier may be deficient or the CM may not be able to rotate. The safety of X-ray radiation is uncertain. Frequently, it is necessary to verify, double check, triple check, or reset the instrument, surgical instrument before the surgery. And in the event of autoclave failure, we resort to using formaldehyde or high-level cold sterilization. ORP are often not trained in trauma care and rotate openly between surgical specialties. From the practitioner perspective, the main issue include training, planning, executing plans, and follow-up. Children are few. There are overwhelming general trauma cases, lack of ongoing training, and overwork. Over-planning is essential for successful medical procedures, including patient preparation, injury identification, and choosing appropriate implant and instrument, as well as follow-up management. We need also multiple plans when the first plan fails. A surgeon must maintain control over dressing change and patient education. For example, this 44-year-old patient nurse who had hip surgery dressed it himself. What strategy can be implemented before, during, and after surgery? Before surgery, patients' injuries, type of fixation, and operating room are checked. The patient's skin condition, operability, and acceptance is considered during the preparation. The surgical site is regularly cleaned and protected before the operation. Understanding the lesion is essential. The use of layers make it possible to optimize the therapeutic choice. Here, a 28 millimeters metallic hip prosthesis head is utilized as a template for sizing calibration. During spine surgery, a knee positioning device can be utilized to support the head. Also, leg support can be used for pubic and sacral support. In this case, the table gives way under the weight of the patient. A makeshift fixation enables the surgery to continue. A tape measure is utilized to determine the length of nails. When measuring the femur, the distance between the great trochanter and the lateral epicondyle is recorded. In the case of tibia, the distance between the tip of the tibial tubercle and the medial malleolus minus 2 centimeters is measured. The nail diameter is measured on X-rays. A femoral nail can be bent for use in the tibia. A malleolus plate can be used for proximal humerus, and a condylar plate can be inverted to fix proximal femur. Creating a template can reduce error and facilitate the prescription of implants. Multiple 2D and 3D software can help in these tasks. A joint arthroplasty software can serve for internal fixation purpose. This is a screenshot of the planning of an osteotomy with Microsoft small print driving tools. When performing anterograde nailing, femoral nailing, it is recommended to use lateral positioning if fluoroscopy is not available, or if the patient has an old injury. If traction table is not available, the fracture can be reduced by placing the fragment end to end and gradually extend them. Under muscular relaxation, a carrier can be used instead of drill bit, and plate and screw can be customized fit with the desired length. We use conventional hand power drills that are sterilized with formaldehyde. However, this poses the risk of formaldehyde inhalation and reduce the engine lifespan. And nimbic formaldehyde gauze is inserted in the glass bottle for diffusion. There are other ways to use a standard non-sterile power drill. The Buchan drill cover system is interesting and more secure. During surgery, it is important to consider the installation process, the positioning process, the different approaches, the technique used, as well as verifying proper bone fixation. When the patient is in supine position, bandage can be used to keep them from moving. The technique used depends on the level of expertise and the availability of the image intensifier. When using a minimal invasive approach, digital palpation is crucial. Feeling the sensation of passing through the cortical bone is necessary for screwing and pinning. When learning to do nailing or intramedullary pinning, it is essential to acquire the intramedullary sensation in sound change impaction and the stop feel. Long curved scissors and periosteal elevators can be used as bone elevators, while plates and chisel can be used as periosteal elevators. Children can also use their finger as bone forceps. Once the bone has been fixed, the electrosurgery cord can be used to check the alignment. Additionally, the mobilization of nearby joint can help confirm the stability of fixation. Palpation is also necessary to ensure the implant is properly positioned and that the screw are discretely protruding from the second cortical layer. Postoperative management is mandatory to optimize the result of surgical fixation. We use a large sterile dressing for at least 15 days, and the suction drain is placed away from the surgical wound to ease its removal. The monitoring will concentrate on any discomfort, wetness of the dressing, or any unusual smell. The surgeon initiates rehabilitation and teaches the patient self-rehabilitation techniques. After a postoperative X-ray, we limit the number of subsequent X-ray to only 3 or 4 after 21 days due to economic reasons. Let's take a look at some examples of these strategies being implemented. In the first case, we'll talk about doing a dynamic hip screw without any instrument set. For that, the patient is to be positioned prone with a cushion under the injured hip. An anterolateral Watson-Jones approach is used to reveal the fracture and the neck of the femur. Next, a cover is inserted parallel to the anterior surface of the femoral neck. And the second cover is placed 2 fingers below the GT crest, 1 centimeter behind the first K-wire, and directly toward the middle of the opposite iliac crest. Once the hole is drilled, the cervical screw is inserted using the plate as a screwdriver. This patient was not able to buy a plate. Instead, screw and wires are used. Here another example of screw and K-wire fixation. This type C ankle fracture was treated with screws and covers. Large muscular release, muscular relaxation medication, and 2 strong personnel are often needed for traction and counter-extension in diaphyseal fracture cases. In humeral sac fracture, intramedullary nailing with minimal opening for pin passage showed good results. A proximal T-shaped plate was used here to fix a diaphyseal fracture in the second cases. A long nail can be trimmed and additional holes can be added. If a non-looking nailing is used, an extra plate can be added to control rotational problems. Using old HAAOT plates with properly placed screw can show great results. The T-shaped plates used for proximal tibia can also be used for femoral osteotomy. Time for the take-home message. First, the children must be involved in every step of care. Second, he needs to maximize efficiency with minimal resources. And finally, we need to reduce and optimize care processes. Thank you for giving me your attention.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Diallo. He actually is not going to be able to join us for a live Q&A session today because of some connection issues while he's traveling, but he's willing to take questions in the chat. So you guys can put them in the chat and he will respond to them when he gets a chance. We'll also put his email in the chat so you can reach out. Awesome. I'll go ahead and introduce our next speaker, Dr. Linda Chokotho. She is the first female orthopedic surgeon in Malawi and a researcher currently working at Malawi University of Science and Technology. As a researcher, she has been involved in violence and injury and musculoskeletal research for more than 10 years. She has worked as a research consultant with COSEXA, Oxford Orthopedic Link, the World Bank, Ministry of Health in Malawi, and the AO Alliance Foundation in projects aiming at improving trauma data quality, trauma and fracture care delivery, and pre-hospital trauma care. We are very excited to have her as a speaker today, and I will share her presentation, and then we will do a Q&A session.
My presentation is on quality of life, functional status, and cost-effectiveness of treatment for femoral shaft fractures in Malawi. This was a study that we did comparing patients treated with skeletal traction and intramedullary nailing. Just to give a brief background about Malawi, Malawi is a country that is located in the southern part of Africa with a population of about 18 million, and the majority of the population live in rural areas. There are 15 orthopedic surgeons in Malawi, which translates to less than one orthopedic surgeon per 100,000 population. If you compare that to high-income countries, for instance, Norway, you will see that the number of orthopedic surgeons in Malawi is very much inadequate. As such, the majority of orthopedic care in Malawi is provided by orthopedic clinic officers. Orthopedic clinic officers are personnel who are treated to a diploma level in clinical medicine, and after which takes 3 years, and then after they undergo 18 months of training in orthopedics. They are trained to provide non-operative management of fractures as well as other orthopedic conditions, but they are also trained to provide emergency management of open fractures. The health system in Malawi is divided into 3 levels. The first level is the primary care level, which consists of health centers. Health centers are located in rural areas, and they are strategically located to ease access to care for the majority of the population who live in rural areas. However, in the majority of health centers in Malawi, in all health centers in Malawi actually, there are no X-ray machines. And because of that, there is no fracture treatment that is provided in these facilities. All patients who require orthopedic care are referred to district hospitals. That's where district hospital, there are 26 district hospitals, and this is where secondary care is provided. For orthopedics, the care is provided by orthopedic clinic officers. And because orthopedic clinic officers are not trained to do surgeries, all patients that require surgeries are referred to the next level, which is the last level, which is tertiary care. There are 4 central hospitals, which are all in urban areas, and this is where all orthopedic surgeons are based. The incidence of femoral shaft fractures has been estimated to be as high as 45 per 100,000 per year in low and middle income countries. A recent study that was done in Malawi had estimated the incidence to be 26.5 per 100,000 population, which translates to about 5,000 people sustaining femoral shaft fractures in Malawi every year. The femur is one of the principal weight-bearing bones, and so fractures of the femoral shaft affect weight-bearing, which in turn affects mobility as well as quality of life. But also it affects the economic productivity, leading to economic loss, especially considering that the majority of patients who sustain femoral shaft fractures are the young who are in the economically productive age group. The gold standard treatment of femoral shaft fractures, as we all know, is the use of intramedullary nail. But the majority of fractures in Malawi are still treated with skeletal traction. This is because of inadequate surgical capacity, inadequate in terms of personnel, infrastructure, equipment, as well as implants. So the aim of our study was to assess the quality of life as well as function in patients with unilateral femoral shaft fractures who were treated with either skeletal traction or intramedullary nailing. In addition, we evaluated the cost effectiveness of the two treatment modalities. It was a prospective observational study where we recruited all patients who were aged 18 years or older who had unilateral femoral shaft fractures. And for those who were treated with intramedullary nailing, we recruited patients who were treated within 6 weeks from the time of injury. This is because most cases, intramedullary fractures of the femoral shaft are not operated acutely. The study was done in 6 facilities, 3 district hospitals, 2 central hospitals, and 1 faith-based hospital. Quality of life was the primary outcome, which was assessed using the EQ5D, and the EQ5D assesses the general quality of life using 5 domains, which are mobility, self-care, usual activities, pain or discomfort, and anxiety or depression. We also assessed function using the short musculoskeletal function assessment questionnaire. We collected data on demographics as well as return to work. Patients were followed up at 6 weeks, 3 months, 6 months, and 1 year after the injury. For the cost effectiveness analysis, we used a simple decision tree model. We used QALYs as a measure of effectiveness, and the QALYs were calculated from the utility scores from the EQ5D questionnaire at baseline, 6 weeks, 3 months, 6 months, and 1 year after the injury. The direct cost data was obtained from another study that was done back in 2016, which had estimated the cost of intramedullary nailing and skeletal traction. We collected data on the direct costs, which included costs on lost productivity, as well as costs associated with transport, meals, and childcare, but also outpatient visits. The analysis was done both from the payer as well as the societal perspective, and we used a 1 year time horizon. For quality of life and function, we found that, in these graphs, the blue represents those who are treated with skeletal traction, and the black represents those who are treated with intramedullary nailing. And for the quality of life, which was assessed using the EQ5D, the lower the scores, the poorer the quality of life. And we found that the quality of life was significantly poor at 6 weeks and 3 months after the injury in patients treated with skeletal traction compared to those treated with intramedullary nailing, but there was no significant differences at 6 months and 1 year. For the function, in this case, the higher the score, the poorer the function. The function was significantly poor in those treated with skeletal traction at 6 weeks, 3 months, and 6 months after injury compared to those treated with intramedullary nailing, but there was no significant difference at 1 year. The short musculoskeletal assessment questionnaire also assesses how bothered patients are with their injury. And we found that patients who were treated with skeletal traction were more bothered compared to those treated with intramedullary nailing, and the differences were significant at 6 weeks and 3 months, but there were no significant differences at 6 months and 1 year. These scores were unadjusted, but the trend were similar even after we had adjusted for possible confounders. In terms of the cost-utility analysis, we found that skeletal traction was less effective compared to intramedullary nailing. We also found that skeletal traction was more expensive compared to intramedullary nailing, both from the payer as well as the societal perspective. So we found that intramedullary nailing was associated with better quality of life and function, but also patients returned to work earlier compared to those treated with skeletal traction. This is quite important in a country where 89% of those who are employed are in informal employment with no access to employment benefits or social protection. And so they are only paid when they are available at work. There was no difference at 1 year in both quality of life as well as function in those who were treated with skeletal traction compared to those who were treated with intramedullary nailing. However, 30% of patients who were treated with skeletal traction initially converted to intramedullary nailing during the course of the study, either because of delayed union or non-union. This highlights the unmet need for operative fracture treatment in Malawi, where patients are initially treated with the suboptimal treatment modality of skeletal traction, and when that fails, they are then operated. We found that intramedullary nailing was a dominant treatment modality because it was both cheaper as well as more effective. And this is quite important, especially considering that prolonged hospital skeletal traction is associated with prolonged hospital stay. And even though in public hospitals, the services are free, so patients do not pay for any of the services in public hospitals, but there is a lot of increased out-of-pocket expenditure, both by patients and guardians. And this has also been documented by other studies that were done in Malawi. Our findings in terms of cost effectiveness support findings from other studies that were done in Cambodia and Kenya that also found that intramedullary nailing was more cost effective compared to skeletal traction. However, our study was the first study to assess cost effectiveness using QALYs as a measure of effectiveness. So in summary, there is need to scale up intramedullary nailing in order, as this may be an efficient use of limited healthcare resources in low-income countries like Malawi. And so in use of intramedullary nailing may actually optimize the limited health budget. You may ask why we had to do this study, especially knowing very well that intramedullary nailing has been found to be associated with better outcomes compared to other methods of treatment for femoral shaft fractures. However, in a low-income country like Malawi, the traditional thinking is that operative management or operative treatment is more expensive than non-operative treatment. This study, the findings of this study has disputed that. And therefore, we can use the findings of this study to advocate as well as to justify for improved surgical capacity so that more patients with femoral shaft fractures are treated with intramedullary nailing, not skeletal traction, as is the case now, where we are spending more money when we are treating our patients with skeletal traction. There were some limitations for this study. Firstly, this was not a randomized trial. As such, we could not control for all possible confounding factors. We were unable to collect adequate radiological details, and so we did not assess our outcomes using fracture union. We also had a loss to follow-up of about 25%. The fact that we used a 1-year time horizon for our cost-effectiveness study analysis, but we may have missed some long-term quality gains. However, as we saw, there were no significant differences at 1 year in the two treatment modalities, and therefore it is unlikely that we missed some long-term quality gains. Our decision tree was very simple. It did not include other possible complications that could arise from treatment with either of the treatment modalities. We also recruited patients from mainly only public hospitals in Malawi. And so our findings may not be representative of what happens in the private hospitals. However, the majority of people in Malawi do not have medical aid. more than 90%. And most of these people use only public hospitals. And so our findings are representative of the majority of orthopedic care in Malawi. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Chokotho. It seems like she wasn't able to join us today, actually. So we'll put her email in the chat and you can reach out if you have any additional questions. And we will move on to our final presentation for the first day of the conference. We are going to present Dr. Dominic Konadu-Yeboah, who is a fellow of the Ghana College of Physicians and Surgeons, as well as the West African College of Surgeons. He has an educational fellowship in orthopedic surgery from the University of Utah. He also has an educational fellowship in arthroscopy and arthroplasty from Apollo Hospital in India. He has completed an AO trauma fellowship at the University Hospital in Switzerland. In 2022, he received the Humanitarian Award from the Orthopedic Trauma Association. His research interests include trauma care quality improvement and patient-reported outcome measurements. I will go ahead and share his presentation now.
My name is Dominic Konadu-Yeboah. On behalf of the authors, I present our paper entitled Training Traditional Bone Setters in Basic Principles of Fracture Treatment, a Proof of Concept in Ghana. The authors of this paper have no disclosures. Ghana is a country located in West Africa with a population of 30 million. However, there is a high rate of injuries. Within a period of 28 months, a total of 9,533 fractures were recorded in 4 teaching hospitals across the country from 2017 to 2019. In addition, in the year 2009, there were 34 road traffic injuries per 1,000 person years among children aged under 15 years in the country. This is Ghana, and this country has a very low specialist surgical workforce of less than 1 per 100,000 population. Specifically, there are 0.73 orthopedic surgeons per 100,000 population in the country. The majority of these few orthopedic surgeons live and practice in cities, leaving most of the outlying areas of the country underserved. The low number of orthopedic surgeons across the country creates a vacuum which is occupied by traditional bone setters. These traditional bone setters are more accessible to community members. They promise to treat both the physical and spiritual components of injuries, and they are very convincing to their clients. However, the activities of these traditional bone setters are fraught with complications. A study that was done in northern Ghana showed that TBS-related limb gangrene resulted in 32 pediatric limb amputations. We set out to do this study with the objective of establishing a formal training program for traditional bone setters on basic principles and techniques of fracture treatment, and to undertake a pilot study to assess training effectiveness. Specifically, we aim to develop and use a culturally sensitive and scientifically acceptable curriculum, tools, and materials to train traditional bone setters on safe techniques of fracture treatment, and to develop and determine the gain in knowledge after training of traditional bone setters. Again, we set out to establish a referral system for trained traditional bone setters to refer cases beyond their scope to local hospitals. Lastly, we aim at assessing the application of the top methods and techniques by traditional bone setters after the training. Our study was a questionnaire-based knowledge and practice assessment of traditional bone setters before and after training. The study took place in the year 2021 over a 9-month period. Our work involved a multidisciplinary team administering training to successive batches of TBS using a locally developed curriculum. The baseline knowledge of the traditional bone setters on fracture management was assessed on the first day prior to commencement of training using a structured questionnaire. Data gathering was undertaken by trained research assistants. At 6 months after the training, the study team visited facilities of trained traditional bone setters to observe any changes in practice or challenges in applying the skills acquired. During these visits, follow-up data were collected as well through observation and interaction with the traditional bone setters using a checklist that had been validated. At the same time, refresher training was undertaken for the traditional bone setters. A referral system was set up to facilitate referral of cases by traditional bone setters to local hospitals. And the cases that they were taught to refer included open fractures, articular fractures, significantly displaced fractures, among others. These are locally fabricated splints that were designed from local materials. On your left-hand side is a splint for forearm and arm fractures. On your right-hand side is a locally developed splint for fractures of the tibia and fibula. These were scenes of training. On your upper right-hand side is a photograph of a traditional bone setter demonstrating the technique of limb bandaging and splintage, which he had acquired from the training. What did we find? We found that within the 9-month period, in 5 training sessions, we had trained 157 traditional bone setters. Most of them were males who practiced in rural areas with a mean duration of practice of 20 years. About half of them had no formal education. The traditional bone setters were trained in modules that involved bone physiology and anatomy, fractures in children, splinting and bandaging of limbs, hand hygiene, fracture complications, pain management, as well as healing of fractures. They were also taught how to undertake record keeping in their practice. Again, at 6 months after the training, the most improved areas of TBS practice that we observed involved record keeping, hand hygiene, and patient rehabilitation. The gaps in TBS practice that we noticed at follow-up related to fracture splintage and pain management. A total of 37 patients had been referred to local hospitals in the 6 months following the training. The 37 referred cases were all referred appropriately according to the taught criteria for referral. The picture on your right-hand side was that of a patient with a supracondylar fracture of the left humerus arriving at a local hospital referred by a trained traditional bone setter. The fracture had been splintered and the patient was accompanied by a completed referral form which had been completed according to the taught method. Our group is not the first to attempt organizing an educational program for traditional bone setters. Similar work has been attempted in Ethiopia, Nigeria, and Nepal. However, we believe that our work is to date the most structured attempt to train traditional bone setters and incorporates the most detailed analysis of the effectiveness of the training. The training and successful integration of traditional birth attendants into the formal healthcare system of some African countries, which led to a reduction in stillbirth rates lends credence to this concept. Our teaching modules were translated from English into local languages. This could have compromised the quality of the information that was delivered during the training sessions. This was a limitation of our work. Again, the study participants were drawn from 4 out of 16 regions of the country. This may limit nationwide generalization of the findings of our study. In conclusion, providing a formal training to traditional bone setters is effective and could improve their practice and treatment outcomes. Again, training traditional bone setters could result in a significant gain and retention in knowledge. Lastly, linking trained traditional bone setters to hospital-based care providers may improve their treatment outcomes and increase the potential for trained traditional bone setters to safely and appropriately refer patients to local hospitals. Further work is required to assess after an educational program the change in practice by traditional bone setters, the change in numbers and types of traditional bone setter-related complications, as well as the numbers of fractures and dislocations that should be referred to local hospitals but are not. This our study was funded by the HAAOT Alliance and HAAOT Strategy Fund. Thank you for your kind attention.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Konadu-Yeboah. I think we might have seen you here earlier today. Are you still with us? If not, we will share his information also in the chat, so you guys can go ahead and email if you have any questions. So that was actually our last presentation for today. I want to thank everyone for coming, and Vincent is going to talk a little bit about what Saturday is going to look like.
Je vous remercie tous d'avoir été des nôtres aujourd'hui. Donc, ainsi se termine la première journée de la HAAOT, qui a été quand même enrichissante. Donc, il faut se souvenir que la HAAOT est sur 2 jours. Donc, le deuxième jour, ce sera le samedi 7 à partir de 9 h du matin et sera surtout centré sur la pratique chirurgicale en Haïti. Donc, tous nos présentateurs seront des médecins de service haïtiens et également des résidents haïtiens. So I was saying that this was the first day of our conference, that Saturday is the second day. We're gonna start earlier Saturday at 9 o'clock, and it's gonna be more Haiti focused with 3 Haitians attending and 3 Haitian residents sharing their experience and surgical technique in their practice here in Haiti. So I hope to see you guys on Saturday, and thanks again.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming.
There is a survey that you can, yeah.
Oh, sorry,
exactly.
Go ahead.
We have a survey here, and you can submit it and put on the answers, and that will be it for today.
Yes, and if you take a screenshot after finishing that survey and send it to me and Vincent, we will get you a 32 gigabyte USB. It's just a little souvenir from the conference. It has our logo.
Yeah. So everyone take a screenshot, and if you can, send it to us. Vous pouvez faire une capture d'écran du formulaire et me faire parvenir ça. On vous fera avoir un souvenir de la HAAOT qui a une clé USB de 32 gigs.
And Vincent and I will stay on for a couple more minutes if anyone has any questions or wants to talk after completing the survey.